Hey, I'm Ryan, and this is part 3 of the Speakeasy Getting Started series. In this video on CI/CD configuration, I'll be covering the release and publishing process, the SDK generation CI/CD workflow, feature branch workflow for SDK updates, and release generation and versioning. Let's start with an overview of the release and publishing process. Speakeasy automates and abstracts away the complexities of release management and publishing to package repositories. To give you the big picture, here's a recap from the overview video of the release and publish process. Manual updates, such as configuration changes, should follow a feature branch style workflow, excluding all Speakeasy generated files. Once the pull request is merged into the default branch, the generate job runs to compile the SDK into a release branch and creates a corresponding pull request. Finally, the release pull request is merged into the default branch, triggering the publish job and pushing the release to the package repository. The version of each release is determined by the number and types of SDK changes, but you can override the version bump type or set the version explicitly when generating the release, which I'll cover later in this video. Using the Discord SDK I created in the previous video as an example, I'll now add the SDK generation CI/CD job. To create the SDK generation job, open a terminal and run Speakeasy configure GitHub. You'll be prompted to install the Speakeasy GitHub app, which helps with CI/CD configuration and allows releases to be monitored from the Speakeasy dashboard. But I'll skip it for now to demonstrate how to manage releases purely from GitHub. Looking at the SDK generation YAML file, we can see that the job can be triggered manually from the actions workflow page as indicated by the workflow dispatch property, and is also scheduled to run daily at midnight. The daily schedule being useful for checking if a new release is generated due to OpenAPI spec changes or Speakeasy code generation updates. Let's stage the SDK generation YAML file, add a commit message, and push to the main branch. Then from the terminal, click the link for the Speakeasy API keys page. To create the Speakeasy API key, click the plus button, provide a name, copy the API key value, and click close. Then head back to the terminal and click the repository actions secrets link. Click new repository secret, name the secret Speakeasy API key, paste in the API key value, and click add secret. Finally, click the repository settings link, scroll to the bottom of the page, and enable actions to create and approve pull requests. Then click Save. With the required configuration in place, we're now ready to test the SDK generation workflow. Head to the Actions page, select Generate, and click Run Workflow. For this initial test, we'll force the SDK to generate. Otherwise, Speakeasy will skip creating the release pull request since the generated files will match those in the initial commit. Once the job completes, the release pull request is created from the release branch. With the SDK generation workflow tested, I'll now demonstrate a feature branch workflow for SDK customizations. A feature branch workflow should only commit files that have been manually updated, as CI/CD now takes care of generation. Also, I recommend adding a classic branch protection rule for the default branch, so pull requests are required for merging changes. As an example SDK update, let's improve the summary section of the README. First, I'll open a terminal and create a new feature branch. I'll then update the fixes overlay YAML file to override the description field from the original spec, as that is what Speakeasy uses to populate the summary section in the README. I'll then regenerate the SDK using Speakeasy Run, and once complete, we can review the updated README. Although it's a minor improvement, small changes like this do help the SDK feel more polished. I'll stage the OpenAPI fixes YAML file, add a commit message, commit the change, and publish the branch. I'll create the pull request by heading to the repository page, click Compare and Pull Request, add a description, and click Create Pull Request. Then once the pull request has been reviewed and approved, it can be merged into the main branch by clicking Merge Pull Request, then Confirm Merge. The feature branch workflow is simple to implement and ensures developer-made updates are easy to review. Now let's move on to release generation. Head to the Actions page, select Generate, and click Run Workflow. I'll let Speakeasy determine the version here, but you can always override it later by rerunning the Generate job and setting the version. Once the job completes, the logs show that Speakeasy detected the existing release and updated the current branch and pull request accordingly. Viewing the pull request, the description includes links to the lint report and SDK dashboard page, as well as the CLI version that generated the release and the version bump type. It also provides an overview of the spec changes, in this case, our description override, and may include a changelog for Speakeasy's code generation engine. You can also change the version bump type by updating the pull request label, for example, switching it from patch to minor. To apply the version change, rerun the generation job, and once it's complete, you'll see the version bump type updated to minor. However, I'll revert this to patch since it's the better choice for this update. With the release pull request generated, we're now ready to set up the publishing workflow. You now have a solid understanding of configuring CI/CD for SDK generation, a Speakeasy specific feature branch workflow, and the release generation process and versioning options. Join me in part 4 of the Getting Started series, where we'll cover the SDK publishing process. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you in the next video.